Welcome back, everybody. Lovely to have you with us for more life-changing stories from the Pride of Britain, the podcast brought to you from all of us on the Pride of Britain team and our friends at TSB. Now, as you probably realised, we love to talk about the things that matter most, and this week is no different. Believe it or not, this year sees the UK's LGBTQ plus community mark 50 years of Pride. That's half a century of celebrating and campaigning for inclusivity and visibility. In this week's episode, we'll be revisiting that remarkable timeline, speaking to those pushing for change right at the very beginning, then and also now. We're joined by a host of important voices in this campaign, including the force of nature, who is presenter and DJ Jsky, TSB's Emma Springham, and veteran activist and incredible woman with a quite remarkable story and a Pride of Manchester winner, Lucia Fitzgerald. First of all, I managed to grab Jsky for a frank and a pretty upbeat chat about his remarkable journey. Well, hello, beautiful man. First of all, I love your earrings.
Thank you. I mean, what's an outfit without an earring?
and the idea that you've got this whole rack of clothes behind you, just absolutely love it. Really, really do. Now, I want to talk about your life because you look so fabulous. I mean, you look absolutely, I put the camera on here and it's like, boom.
I mean, coming from you, Carol, you're the one that's known for being fabulous. I'm a mere mortal in your shadows.
Hardly the state of me. But tell me about your background, first of all.
I'm a born and bred Mancunian. My mum was born in Jamaica. She came over to the UK when she was 6 years of age on a plane by herself. Very brave woman, very incredible story there.
By herself?
Yeah, she was.
Wow.
She was left behind, so she had to make the journey back on her own. And she's just an amazing woman. She's not like too mad at my family about it, but she's like very inspiring. My dad's dad, who passed away last year, he was from St. Kitts, so it's quite a mixed heritage that I've got. And I went to school in Whitefield and then to college in Bury and to university in Huddersfield. I am a singer, songwriter and a presenter. I've done lots of different random things, but I was assigned the name Jsky at college by a music producer that I wanted to work with. At the time, I was calling myself J Style because I was like, I can do any style of music I want. And it's like, if you're going to work with me, I'm going to give you a new name. But what I didn't realise was at the time, he was actually taking the mick out of me and saying like, this kid's got his head in the clouds, he's never going to make it. And the song that I wrote, he ended up giving to another artist. So he stole my song. And I just had finished watching the film Tina Turner, What's Love Got to Do with It, where she fought for her name because I'd been gigging with that name. So I was like, well, if you're going to steal the song, then I'm going to steal the name. And I'm going to tell people it's because the sky's the limit. And I just made it work since then.
You seem to me like one of those people who makes everything work.
You have to.
Whatever's handed to you, you make it work, don't you?
Oh, thank you. Well, you know what this industry's like, Carol. You've got to just roll with the punches sometimes.
You do. Right. Now, tell us about your kind of history, in terms of the LGBT aspect of it and what it was like growing up.
It was the second year of uni that I finally accepted and understood that I was not a straight person, and I'm not the sort of person to shy away from things. So that very weekend I got my mum down and my brother down to my halls and we went for a coffee and I told them and we all cried. And to be honest, my mum and my brother, they're very protective of me. So if anything, it just made them worry more. And they just said, like, as long as you can be safe and not like put yourself in too much danger. I think I've probably made them worry even more since, because I think I've kind of pushed it as far as I can at the moment. But it's just been a long journey in terms of finding out what I like doing and how I like to express myself. But also, I was always taught to dress for the job that you want in life, for the position that you want. So when I graduated from university and I started to because I thought Manchester was too big a scene to crack or to stay in Huddersfield, but I braved it because I knew some of the popular girls at uni who were doing promotions and all of the VIP events on the straight scene in Manchester. And I just thought perfect, because the gay scene at the time wasn't accepting of me. I won't get into the clubs there. They'd say like members only. You can't come. There's too many people in the club. It was very restrictive. So I just thought, fine. Because what I'd always done is if people didn't accept me, I'd make a way to make them jealous which is so petty. So, like, for example, when I lost all my friends at high school, at college, because they thought I was gay, I thought, right, I'm going to be friends with the best looking girl, so then they're going to want to have to be my friend. And I just thought the same thing here. I just thought, right, I'm going to make myself known on the straight scene so the gay scene accept me. So I got in with all of the VIP clubs, and I just was told to dress for the job I wanted. And I thought, well, I'm a singer-songwriter, so I want to dress as a pop star. You find what works, but it's just interesting that people treat you so differently depending on what you're wearing.
Yeah,
and that's something I'm still playing with at the moment. Now I'm pushing in different ways. But in terms of how to identify who I am and where I am right now, I'd say that I'm still massively expressing myself in all of the facets of fashion and visuality, but also pushing the envelope of what makes a man and what makes a woman a woman.
So tell me about that then.
It can get so confusing, and to be honest with you, I make a lot of mistakes, and I think that's something that we all need to just learn to accept, is that people can have the best of intentions and still make mistakes, and we should be a lot more forgiving. I'm not a fan of cancel culture. I'm not a fan of, okay, we've decided everyone needs to display their pronouns, and if you don't, you're not an accepting person. I'm not that sort of person to be militant about anything, and I think a lot of the younger people coming up, unfortunately, with the best of intentions, are being too militant with it. Also, if you're going to be strict and say, what are your pronouns? Because I know pronouns are a big thing for a lot of people today. You've got to understand some people don't actually know what their pronouns are. They're still discovering themselves. So I don't think that's the be all and end all. I think if you're going to put your energy anywhere, it should be into looking at the law and what rights we can fight for, and not for things that just look good at a surface level. Terminology changes week by week. The flag even changes week by week. So it's just being understanding that everyone's going to be different. Things affect people differently. I'm not saying, like, if someone says this is my pronoun, don't respect that. Respect what anyone says about how they want to be defined, whether that's their name or their pronoun, but also respect that someone might make an innocent mistake, and also that someone might not want to define their life by how you define yours.
And so how are you defining yours then?
Well, I mean, to be honest with you, I still see myself as a gay man. But then, for example, I shouldn't really be airing this out, but I did Salford Pride last weekend. Yeah. And the presenter got me backstage before I went on stage and said, what are your pronouns? Quick, how do you identify? And I'm like, oh, honestly, pronouns don't bother me. Call me what you like. But I'm a gay man. But I don't see the whole offence personally, because if you're offended by calling a woman, in my eyes, it's like, well, why? There's lots of great strong women out there. It's not the worst insult in the world to be called a her or a she anymore. So to me, I just like say, call me what you like, but I see myself as a man, and that's just the whole idea with dealing with insults all my life. You can say what you like about me, but how you see yourself is what's most important. Anyway, he goes on stage, and this is a non-binary person that's presenting, and he does this massive speech about, I really love Jsky, just like me, as a fellow non-binary individual. And I just thought, oh my God, he's got it complete. I don't see myself as non-binary, but then again, backstage, someone else saw me as a drag queen. So I'm not offended by anything. I know how I see myself. And to be honest, RuPaul said it best. We're all born naked and the rest is drag. How we present to the world and what we decide to dress and prepare for the world is just a form of makeup. End of the day, we get our clothes off, we go to bed and we start again. And so labels are just for boxes as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, a lovely speech. I love that idea. Let's move on to your TV career. So you started causing trouble in Manchester.
Yes.
And with your feathers and your sequins.
Right.
I can't take my eyes off your earrings, by the way.
Thank
and
you.
Your beautiful hair. You really are a beautiful man. Can I just say
it means a lot coming from you, Carol Vorderman, because you are the epitome of glamour. Like, when I used to watch you on TV, it was like, that's how it's done. That's it. Textbook. We can all aspire.
Oh, I need more feathers and sequins in my life, I have to say.
Oh, don't we all?
Don't we all? But I think, sorry, I'm interrupting myself here, Jsky, because I've got, a lot of gay mates, as it probably won't surprise you. So Owain Wynne Evans, who is the weatherman, is my darling. So we're on the phone every day. Alan Carr, Gok. Now, I tell him every day now, H from Steps, right? So he has come out, and obviously we all know H is gay, and H is the most amazing dad to his twins, Max and Cubby. I mean, he is incredible. But what he has been doing over the last, I would say, year or so, post-COVID, is his style of dressing has changed dramatically.
I've seen it.
He wears makeup, and I keep saying to him, And I hope you'll understand this. I said to him last night, actually, he looked hot. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I said H, you cracked it. It's H for hot now. And have you found that it's got better, probably since the RuPaul show has been on, for you?
I mean, life will always find a way to be challenging, especially when you go against the grain of what is considered acceptable. And I think in a lot of ways, I do go out on my way to push against that grain, just because if I believe in something wholeheartedly, I feel like it's my duty, whilst I've still got the strength and whilst I'm still able to do something about it. And it might seem like a small thing, me wearing like a ball gown on a red carpet, but there are people that'll be at home that'll see that and will be inspired. And because of who I am and my connections and stuff, they'll see me being accepted by other people, straight people that they would not think would be accepting of that. Like people from Love Island or Tom Zanetti or whoever it is, if they see someone like that being okay with how I am, it just changes the world in a small incremental way. But in terms of, do I still get slack for it? Absolutely. I could be walking down the street. It could be public transport. It could be social media comments. It could be anything. But at the same time, if you are going to put yourself like me out there, I've got to expect the good and the bad. Everything in this world is in a state of balance. And I can't just expect to be filled with love and worshipped. I mean, especially when I go home, I'm always going to get grounded and humbled there. But like, at the end of the day, it's like, who am I living for? Am I living for the acceptance of other people, or am I living to do what makes me truly happy and to do something that I feel is going to help people?
Your media career is fantastic. So you're on BBC Radio Manchester.
Yes.
I love the title. Tell everyone what the title of your show is.
It's called The Dead Good Show.
That's so mank.
It's typical.
Yeah. Oh, it's dead good, is that? In Leeds, we say, right, nice. We say in Leeds.
The Right Nice Show.
Yeah, the Right Nice Show. The dead. So what do you do on the Dead Good Show then?
So on a Wednesday every week from 7 till 10, I'll be having guests on to talk to them. I'll have a panel from 8 till 9 that'll discuss the latest news stories and showbiz and entertainment and politics. It could be anything that's really hot and trending. And then in the last hour, we'll get to hear about what I've been up to in the wonderful world of Jsky, along with the soundtrack of BBC Radio Manchester. It's great. I love it.
I'm going to tune into that. Definitely.
I've got to get you on the show, to be honest
with you. I'd love to be on. Oh, I would absolutely love to be on. And you're a presenter on Gadio. I love that name.
Yes. Gadio. It's the largest
huge,
LGBT station in the world. So I do from 7 till 9 on a Monday with that as well. So the best of both worlds, commercial and BBC.
You're enjoying it. Now, a few people have seen you on, quite a few, on First Dates and on Channel 4.
Right.
And just explain what that was.
So back in 2015, I was on the third series of First Dates. But at the time, I hadn't seen an episode of it. But I'd seen the trailer, and on the season before, I knew a girl that was on it, and I thought, God, if she's got on it, then I'll get on it, which is really shady, I know. But I saw it and I thought, this is great because I want to make a name for myself, but at the same time, I want to fall in love. It's like I was using the apps and stuff, and I'd been single my whole life up to that point, and I just thought, let's just do it. And then if I fall in love successfully on TV, I could be the nation's sweetheart. It'd be great. I'll be the new Cheryl Cole. But I went on the show. And literally, like, I was so unprepared for it. I walked in thinking that Fred was my date. I was absolutely buzzing. I didn't have a clue what was going on. But it was a good experience. It was a really good experience. And I think it got like about 2 million viewers, which at the time was a big deal because I don't think Big Brother was getting that many. So it got in the book, and then I got on like in Attitude. It really helped a lot. But unfortunately, the relationship was never meant to be. Like, I just played along a little bit for the cameras because I didn't want to be disrespectful. It's like when you get socks for Christmas and you're like, oh, great socks, but you don't want to be rude. And you also don't want to get rejected on camera, so you've also got to give a little bit to the guest as well, haven't you?
So have you found love since then, Jsky?
You know what? I have. So I've been in a relationship for 3.5 years now.
Oh,
it's
wow.
My first ever boyfriend, and it's working. I'm really lucky. He's the total opposite to me. He's from the countryside. He's quiet. He's quieter. He's quieter, but he's very private. So he probably won't even like me saying that much about him. But he's lovely. He's a true gentleman.
Is he? Oh,
Yeah.
that's lovely. Oh, well, I'm glad you found it. Life will never be dull with you, that's for sure. Ever, ever, ever. So you were a judge on this year's Pride of Manchester, as in
Right.
Pride of Britain Awards. What was that like for you?
It was the greatest honour. I got to do it last year, but that was virtual because of the lockdown.
Of course, yeah.
And even that felt incredible. But like, just to be a part of something where you can recognise people from your home city, a city I'm so proud of, for doing such amazing things, it's the greatest honour, and it's something I treasure a lot. Obviously, people are like, don't do it because once you're a judge, you can't ever win. But I'm like, it's not about the winning with something like that. It's just about being a part of it for me, and I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful. Now, one of the things that, a lot of people talk about every day, because it happens to everyone, is about the haters.
Right.
You'll have particular kinds of haters. I have particular kinds of haters. Lorraine would have particular kinds of haters. Dr. Hillary, whoever it might be, everyone has their haters, right? And sometimes when you read the stuff, I tend not to read it because I just think, do you know what? Life's too short. But when you do read it, it can damage people.
For me, like when I first started like trying to make a name for myself and I was hanging around with some of the girls at Hollyoaks, they used to picture me and like take the mick out of what I was wearing, and they used to call me and friend. So it'd be like Stephanie Davis and friend, George Potter, and it was always and friend. But then the comment section would, on like the Daily Mail, for example, it would be about, it would like Georgie or Steffi be like, what the hell is that thing, freak? And in one end, I'm like, God, they're calling me out. But in the other, I was like, this article's got nothing to do with me, but all the comments are about me. There's some power in that somewhere. And then in the end, they started calling me, like, God, I think the Evening News said music maestro. And then there was like presenter. Before they knew it, they settled on fashionista. And I was like, you know what, that's great. I'd never heard that before. And they've not stopped calling me since. And I still don't really know what it means. I just take it as someone that... that likes to dress up and pushes the boat, but it's like, it's a nice term, and people have sort of like associated, like, oh, he's the Manchester fashionista, and I'll take that. But in terms of like, how do you manage haters? I think it's just a case of when you pick up your phone, because we're all addicted to our phones and to the internet in some respects, we have to ask ourselves, what is the point of us picking up our phone? Because if we're going into it with no point and no intention, then we're going to be in a way vulnerable to whatever we see and receive. So for me, it's like, if I'm doing it to promote myself, right, that's my focus. I'm doing it to send this tweet because that's my job. If I'm doing it to catch up on stuff, right, that's what I'm doing it for. If I'm doing it because I care what people think about something, then I'll look at the notification, then I'll look at the comments. But you've got to be mentally prepared for the good and the bad. Otherwise, it'll take you by surprise and it'll knock you off your feet and you won't want to pick it up again. So it's just remembering as well that it's not real. And if you're not liking what you're seeing, you don't have to see it. Like, I know people are all for like enforcing stricter policies on social media, like, oh, you must have to verify your identity. I mean, people will always find a way to be a hater, whether you're verified or not. I think it's just a matter of, if someone does something that's wrong, that's threatening, you report it. If you don't like what you see from someone, you block them, you mute them. You don't have to respond to everything, because whatever you respond to, you're just going to encourage more of. What you resist persists. I'm a firm believer in that. And if you feed into something, it's going to grow. So I just comment on the things that are nice and that I like. And if someone tries to come for me, then the best thing I can do is ignore them, because at the end of the day, all they want is my attention.
Yeah. It's lovely to talk to you, Jsky.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for all the amazing work that you continue to do, for being such a shining light and such an amazing ally for the community. You're a legend.
Thank you, darling. Thanks, Jsky.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jsky. Wishing you all the very best. I still am jealous of your earrings.
At TSB, we're proud to partner with the Pride of Britain Awards, because we want to say thank you to all the everyday heroes, to the ones who put the fun in fundraising, or those who speak up for others, to the good-natured few who plant seeds to feed communities, and to the warm-hearted people who always have the kettle ready. TSB partners the Pride of Britain Awards, thanking those who help others, because that's life made more.
Now, as the Chief Marketing Officer at TSB, Emma Springham has seen firsthand how life in the corporate world has changed to embrace and acknowledge diversity in the workplace. She told me more. So, Emma, you are the Chief Marketing Officer of TSB, and we're celebrating all over the country, lots and lots of different events. There's 50 years of Pride in the United Kingdom. And I've been talking to Lucia Fitzgerald, who's now, she won't mind me saying, 74, and her story should be made into a movie, quite honestly. and she remembers, and I think it's good to remember. And do you think it's good to remember the early days when things were not as they are now?
I think it's really important to remember it. I came out nearly 30 years ago and I was scared. I was scared, the feelings of shame and guilt and people finding out. That's just in my personal life. And then in my corporate life, that was another element of, if I'm going to be rejected in family and friends, it's kind of, this corporate was another sort of ladder, really, I suppose, in my life to kind of get through. I think it's really important. I've got twins, they're 13, and the way they talk, it's a completely different conversation. It's liberating. But for me, I remind them different stories of where we've come from and the history. And, I really try and take them on that journey so they realize that I've been on a journey. And then we're looking at other D&I aspects where they're not as progressed, actually, and what can we do to support.
How good is the corporate world? I'm not talking about TSB now, but generally, how good is the corporate world? Has it needed legislation for things to get better?
I think it's about the people. So every organisation's different, whether it's big or small. If I'm going over to a partner, I just think every company's different. But I think there's a real desire. I know there's a need because you've got to do it from a brand. There's that bit of it. But to me, when you start to speak to the senior execs, there's a real desire to learn, actually. And I see that across organisations. I think it's more of an education. And what I love at the moment, it seems in the last 5 years, senior execs are putting their hands up going, I don't know, actually. I understand this bit and I'm comfortable, but actually I don't know about this bit. And I've seen a real change in the D&I groups and networks. They're getting into exco level and board level. And again, that's a real difference of their voice coming from top down. So I think it's sort of progressing, but I do think it comes down to the individuals and those people in charge. And if you haven't got diversity at that level, you're not going to generate those conversations and ask the difficult questions of, are we heading in the right direction and where are we? How can we help and support the communities?
And has that come from the way that the media perceives it all now? Because there is a push now in media.
Oh, it's huge. So when I came out at 16, I always talk about it. I didn't have social media. I had the yellow pages. That's all I had, and it was.
I'd forgotten about them.
I love that yellow pages because actually what was in that yellow pages was local community groups. And that allowed me, when you feel very alone and you've not told anyone and you don't know where to go. And I talk to my kids about there is so much more information now that's out there. There's groups, communities, and social media, of course, has its pros and cons. We all know that. But I just said to him, I didn't know where to go. I sort of had to look through this yellow pages and go to a phone box. I did literally stand there, go into the phone box to call this association to find out, what nights were they, meeting up as a group. Just so you know, as a side story, I turned up very nervous, sat outside for 2 hours early, and it was a bank holiday and apparently it was shut. So I was absolutely gutted. And it took me 3 months to get the confidence to go back. But, there is no, and I think talking about it, I think for my family, it was very difficult because there wasn't many TV programs, there wasn't much media. So I think media is fundamental. And I see myself as a marketeer. I've got a duty to make sure I'm presenting whatever work, I put out there on any channel in the right way to try and push some of those conversations as well. But I think, like I said, though, execs are starting to be more human. They're trying to open up with stories. And we coincidentally had one of our exec almost come out this week. And it's been so powerful internally for someone at that level. And, people are looking up to them going, oh, my God, I can really be myself here. And I think it's moments like that where I sit back and I feel very proud.
Do you think it's more difficult for older people to do it?
It depends if they've got children or nieces and nephews. And I think that, as more families are becoming more open, I think that's kind of helping, actually, and I think I find there's a difference between people that have experienced within their own family. And I think that helps. And I think media plays a huge part, of it is okay, and to talk about it. But yeah, I find more if they've got children, there's a greater understanding, or nieces and nephews, definitely, to get that generation.
So you said you were 16 when you came out. How was that when you went into your first job? Were you frightened again? Did you feel as though you sort of had to come out again when you went to work?
I didn't, I came out at 16, but it was very much a secret in the family. So it sort of held in. So there was that kind of, don't let people know. But I coincidentally started working at the Woolwich in Bexley Heath, which was my hometown. But my mum had connections there. She worked there. So I had to feel really careful to protect her and to protect her feelings. And I felt it took me years and years to come out at work. It was almost like I had to build trust around people of, almost becoming friends. And it was more of a friendship. I'd kind of let people know when they got to know me, because people just didn't talk about anything. That people weren't open. People didn't, and I didn't want to be the one that kind of stuck out of the group. And I was very nervous because I was highly ambitious as well. So I didn't want anything to stop me from getting promoted.
Yeah. And nothing negative happened when that came out?
No, definitely not. No, it was kind of, I don't think it was like a big announcement or anything, but I guess there was no negativity. But I guess there was difficult conversations though, in terms of, when I decided to have children, HR had never, considered what do we do with a same-sex couple that are, having children. So I think I was very much sort of leading some of the conversations with HR and sort of looking at different ways of doing things at that point.
What was their attitude? Because, often in HR, they want to help, don't they? But the rules are set and so on. What was their attitude back then?
I think it was we're talking now 13, 14 years ago, and there hadn't really been anybody else that had gone through that process. So they actually decided to treat me in a similar way that a man would. So I got 2 weeks paternity leave, and actually I sat back and thought, well, should I be treated differently to a man? Should I be feeling, I guess, it came up with the whole gender and questioning, but it's not fair on men. I thought, well, men only get 2 weeks, so that's not fair on them. But that's why I'm so pleased now to see, people can share the maternity leave, both men and women. That's a big thing for me, actually, to know that's now changed and organisations are starting to allow men to have the same maternity as women.
Obviously TSB, you have, how many employees are there at TSB now? How many people in there?
Yeah, 7,000, 8,000, lots.
Yeah, it's
lots
huge, isn't it? It's absolutely huge. And so obviously, some of the youngsters coming through, they probably don't even think twice about it. How is it dealt with now?
I think it'll always be a thing for some people. So I don't think because I'm a senior as well, I don't feel like I still have the reality of being maybe in younger roles or different roles, or, I'm not sure, different backgrounds. It still depends on your family, doesn't it? And how they sort of react and support you. So I don't know. I don't feel like for everyone it's sort of a done deal. But I do feel that the more, like I say, the more we can story tell and coach as leaders, and be really open. It's like mental health. We have really open conversations about mental health and big topics as they come up. When George Floyd, that happened, there was big conversations that we were driving to, let's talk about this open up conversations. And I think, I don't like it when it takes an event to do that. But I think since these things have started to happen, I think just cultures are starting to open up. And I think employees are demanding more where they can. In terms of, I always talk, when I talk openly, is I interview the companies really hard as I go in around, what are their beliefs around diversity and inclusion? Can they give me examples of what they're doing? I do interview to make sure I'm going to fit into that culture.
So if somebody were to join TSB, and they were gay or lesbian, LGBTQ plus, what would you, and they're a little bit nervous, what would you advise them to do?
I think the first thing is most organisations now do have a network, whether that be full, diversity and inclusion or separate groups. So the first thing I always do is join those groups, because then you've got like-minded people that think very similar to you, and you can start to have really open conversations. So I always head for the groups first, to try and get that kind of inclusion, networking. And I think it kind of goes from there, really. You often then get, involved in a campaign or a project, and then you kind of get swept along on the journey with them, actually. I always find starting there really helps, sort of integrate in.
How far are we to what you would regard as the perfect scenario in the corporate world with diversity now?
Outside of TSB as well?
Well, let's say TSB to start with.
I'd say that I'd mark TSB actually like 9 out of 10, but we've got loads more to do, and there's big plans. There is big plans of what can we do. We're looking at our data. We're looking at our customers as well. It's not only employees, it's also customers, and how do we meet their very specific needs actually? And we're trying to go quite granular. So I say 8 out of 10. Let me be a bit more considerate of, I think there's more we can do, but we're definitely on the right path, definitely.
And what about in the wider corporate world?
I think there's just some brands that are brilliant. Lego did a fantastic campaign last year. I have to look at the marketing, of course, I can't help it. But, I think Virgin Atlantic, again, they're all about, they put it at the core of their brand values. And again, that's what TSB are really passionate about, is putting it right at the core, because we know we're only good as our employees and we're only as successful with customers. So, we've got to move into those directions to truly understand customer needs.
On Pride of Britain, we regard equality, diversity. We've been a big supporter of all of this since we began 23 years ago. Is that part of the reason why TSB has sponsored the Pride of Britain Awards for so long?
I think it is, yeah. I think it's humbling. I think that's the big thing about, Pride of Britain, is you can't help but walk in that room. We've had these conversations outside, is you walk in that room and you forget all of that stuff. You hear the stories and it just kind of makes all of the, I don't know, I hope that the hatred and the discrimination kind of gets questioned, because you just admire and inspired by these people and brave as all these different opportunities. I just find it totally humbling, and I think that's a lot of it actually, is that humbling and everyday heroes. There's these everyday heroes that we need to celebrate, and I know that I just get very proud every time I'm in that room of the people that are up on stage. I think it's incredible, and I always walk away slightly different in my views or appreciation, or I don't know, I always walk away slightly different and changed.
That's a wonderful thing to hear, because it's what we've always wanted to happen with the Pride of Britain. And when people watch it, you kind of, even though people may be in tears while they're watching it, you go away thinking the world's a better place than before you started watching, really.
Yeah, I always cry though, Carol. Guaranteed. I always cry.
I don't blame you. I do too. Yeah, it grabs you, doesn't it? Really grabs you.
It really does, yeah.
Yeah, it does. Well, we wish you all the very best, Emma, with everything that you're doing. And I'm glad to hear that TSB is scoring an 8 or 9 out of 10. That's a win, you see. To me, a 7 out of 10 in anything is a win. And anything above that is a bonus. So congratulations, and and thank you for all that you're doing. It is very, very important, particularly with this golden anniversary, and it is a golden anniversary of celebrating Pride in Britain.
I'm very proud to partner with Pride of Britain.
Thanks, Emma. A very important part of the whole 50 years of celebration and how things have changed for the LGBTQ plus community. It's wonderful to know that it's changed so radically for the better. Now, another woman who has witnessed the very worst and campaigned for so much positive change is our Pride of Manchester winner, Lucia Fitzgerald. She's now in her 70s. And Lucia was forced to leave her home in Ireland as a teenager after facing persecution at home because of her sexuality. She went on to become a passionate campaigner for human rights. She what a woman she is. Working from home in Manchester, she told me why activism still matters. Please listen to this story. It is remarkable. Right, Lucia, it is fantastic to kind of meet you on this. You won a Pride of Manchester award in 2020,
I did, yeah.
Which is...
Look at you showing off yours.
I just got mine for sticking around for so long, not for doing anything remarkable like you.
No,
you don't sound like you're from Manchester.
No. I'm from Ireland. I'm from Southern Ireland, southeast. I was bred, born and raised by the sea on the coast.
Oh, where are you? Whereabouts?
Well, I wasn't born there. I was born in a Magdalene baby home in Cork.
Were you? I know.
Yeah,
Cork.
I was one of the Magdalene babies. I escaped when I was 4 or 5 when I got out of there.
Really? And how did you manage to get out of there then?
Well, my grandfather, they were going to, in those days, rich Americans could arrive up, and they'd buy a lot of the children, and that was the end of the kids. And they were going to sell me off. I think I was either 4 or 5 at the time, because I was in there for a long time. I didn't go down to my grandparents' till I was 4 or 5. I think it was 5. Yeah. And I think I might have had a few unsuccessful little starts with people, because they take the babies for a while, and then if they didn't like the babies, or they were too noisy or crying or whatever the hell it was, annoyed, and you'd be brought back in, So I think I was in and out of different places for a while, and I ended up, my grandfather and my grandmother came and got me. At my grandfather's assistant, he said he wasn't having any grandchild of his, whizzed off to America or anywhere, never to be seen again. He put his foot down. He was a very quiet man, and he made no demands ever on my mother. They were really my grandparents, but I always call them my mother and father. And they still are to me, yeah. So he insisted that I was taken home, and I was. And that's where it all began then.
Just explain to people who don't know, because, obviously you and I are of a different age group, what the Magdalen Children's Homes were, because they came to prominence, didn't they, with a couple of movies and so on. But, for those who are listening, who are younger and don't understand, can you just explain to people what they were?
Well, what they were they were run by nuns, Catholic nuns in the Republic of Ireland, and some here in Britain as well. And they would take in young mothers and help them to have their babies. And a lot of the parents either didn't know, or some of the young people were orphans. And there was all a whole mishmash of reasons why they were in there, but they were all having their little babies. And a lot of them were underage. So the nuns used to take the children off of them and encourage them to let them go to families where they'd be much more well off, and then the girls then would pay the nuns back by doing laundry and stuff like that. Yeah. So that all the girls had to do all the laundry and washing and work for the local farmers, and the nuns just took all the money for that. And as soon as the girls was of age, then they were set loose. And so my mother was no exception. She was set loose, and then she married her husband straight off, not long after that, that she met. And she started her own family.
Because, back then, so you were born 1947?
Yeah.
And it was considered, but, I was brought up a Catholic in North Wales, and I'm not far behind you in the years. And, it was considered very much a disgrace, wasn't it? You were disgraced. As a matter of fact, you were disgraced and tabooed all your life then, depending on how your parents took it or how things were at home, But, my grandmother in particular that took me in, she was very close. She had very close contacts with the nuns at home in my own hometown. And so, I had nuns around me all the time. And so I developed a terrible fear of them, because every time I'd done anything naughty or bad, I was told Sister Catherine was going to come to see me. And once Sister Catherine came to see you, you were in trouble. And you were also very ashamed of whatever you'd done. And it was something silly now, you think, when you think back. But and they were the same. They taught in the schools as well, and they were very cruel. In my school, one in particular used to beat the hands off of people with a big stick when they couldn't learn. And what I couldn't learn anything, because I know is described as dyslexia, and a little bit. I'm lucky to get in here today because I have terrible technical things. I've dyspraxia and all sorts of little bits and bobs wrong with me, and so. I don't know how it started. I think it started from the beatings with the sticks on the hands, and you got a terrible fear of trying to do something, again after that. And so everything techie makes me frightened to death. Does it even now?
I can talk the hind legs off a donkey.
well, let's stick to that then. I mean, we can learn so much. We can learn so much from your story, because the reason that you won a Pride of Britain award, as I've said to people, is because of the campaigning that you have done on the LGBT issues. So if I can take you back then, you found yourself homeless when you were just a teenager.
I was about coming up to 13, 14.
Yeah.
And I was palling around with a girl. She was a Protestant, so she lived over on the posh side of town. We didn't announce to each other that we were gay, but we were very fond of each other, but we didn't know anything about it.
So how old were you then?
I think between 13 and 14.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I might have been 14 because it wasn't long after that story starts. And she used to write me little notes, saying good night and all that type of thing, and slip them in my bag or in my school bag or in my pocket because we're only kids. And so my brother went looking for, he was really my uncle, but I always called my brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
My brother went looking for a pencil one day and I said, you might want there in my school bag. Yeah. And so thanks. He took it out and wasn't there a little note in there from this young woman, and all hell broke loose. They thought I was having an affair with her or whatever. I didn't know anything about sexuality. And I wasn't interested in boys or girls or sex or anything else at the time.
Yeah.
And I was interested in playing hurling. That's all I wanted to do, be the best hurler on the street. I was very good at throwing stones. That was my thing. Anyway, all hell broke loose. And my grandmother just lost the plot. And she basically said that she was going to have a talk with Daddy. And that, that she's not, this young one is not going, this is what she said, this young one is not bringing any more disgrace on her family. She can go up to Belfast and go into one of them homes up there. And I'm not having this on my doorstep, along with having to rear her and the shame it's brought and all the rest of it. And now this,
Yeah.
She's
and
not
that was
all in
because,
it.
And that wasn't just society. That was a lot of the church as well, wasn't it?
Yes,
in Ireland,
yes.
It was massive.
Oh, yeah. The church went hand in hand.
Yeah.
Very, very close back then. So, you know. And my mother was cleaning the schools that was run by the nuns and everything. So she was very involved in all that. So I didn't stand a chance. And so the next minute they were talking about what would be described as, I wouldn't call it that today, but they described it in those days as the lunatic asylum, where you could put, children and stuff like that. Yeah. So I thought to myself, God, she's going to put me away. Yeah. And but I saw it as worse than where I came from. So I thought, oh no, so anyway, as I started to get really, fed up and depressed and all the rest of it. And she started really beating me and telling me about all the shame I'd already brought on the family and all this type of thing. And the hidings now was really bad news. They were really bad news, to the point where some of the neighbours on either side actually sent the cruelty man to her twice. So I think she was trying to beat this thing out of me that wasn't there anyway, but it was, but I didn't know, you know what I mean? But she knew for some reason. And even I heard my grandfather saying one night, you can't keep hitting this child like this, it's just not natural. He was a very quiet, easygoing man, very quiet. And she was having none of it. So I thought, if I don't get out of this house, this woman is going to kill me.
Yeah.
Are you with me? So I started rooting around in the drawers for some money to see if I could just get out and run away or whatever. And the next minute I pulled out this paper, and it wasn't my birth certificate. And it had this other woman's name on it, and I had no idea what the hell. I thought, oh my God, what's this? It was in a drawer that I never went in before, So
you, at that point, really thought that your biological grandparents were your parents?
Oh yeah, they're Mammy and Daddy, and all my brothers and sisters were my brothers and sisters, and they're all my aunts and uncles. Really, I never knew. Yeah, the thing that I was really devastated with it all was the fact that my dad, whom I adored, my grandfather, he wasn't my grandfather at all. He wasn't my dad at all. He was my grandfather.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
so it's shock after shock and abuse after abuse.
So off I went. I got up on my bicycle. I had a little one of them high nillies with a big basket.
I know.
And to get the shopping. And off I went and got the bus into the city. because I lived in a sort of a country town that had a seaside and thing like that. And got the train from it was the bus from there up to Dublin, and walked straight in on the boat. And they said, "Tickets, please." I said, "My mother and father's coming up the gangway in a minute." I said, "Can I just in and have a look?" And he said, "Yeah, okay, go on, off you go." Up I went onto the gangway, and I had a £10 note that I stole out of the drawer. That was all I had. And I got off at Liverpool.
Yeah.
And I went to this address where my birth mother was. I won't say where it is, but I went there. And I stayed there for a couple of months. And I decided I had to go. For various reasons, I had to go. So
you're still only like 14.
Yes, I was just coming up to 15. I was hitting 15 by then, because it was August, September, October. Yeah, I was in 15 then in the October. This was the August when I was doing this business. So anyways, I arrived at the station and I just stepped out, and I thought, what happened was, whilst I was at my birth mother's, I had a little job. And I overheard, I missed this, I'm getting very forgetful. I missed this little bit out. I overheard some of the women in the factory talking about this place in Manchester where all these queers go. And I said, "Oh, what's a queer?" I never knew anything about anything. And they said, "Oh, they're these dirty old people, you know what I mean? And they have sex with one another and all this type of thing." And I thought, "Oh, that's filthy." And then I thought, hold on a minute, I might be a bit like that myself, you know what I mean? Because I'm not attracted to men at all. But I'm not attracted to women either, so I've got to, So when I went, they said the place was in Manchester, so I made for Manchester, because I thought, if I'm that way, and I think I might be, I don't know, then that would be where I would go to.
That's very brave, though, considering...
Yeah, but I had no place else to go.
No, well, well... It's still brave, Lucia. It's still really, really brave, because you use the word queer, and for the youngsters listening, back in that day, that was the word to describe gay, wasn't it? It's not like it's a different version of the word back then.
Yeah. If you were queer in those days, you'd get a terrible hiding from the police that arrested you.
Well, it was illegal.
And everyone in the street. It was illegal for the lads. It wasn't illegal for women, because Queen Victoria decided that there was no such thing as a lesbian.
Oh, so that didn't
Queen
exist.
Victoria saved our backside. Queen Vic saved us. And threw all the lads under the bus.
Well, anyway.
So anyways, I made my way down there, and I made my way across from the station, and I went and I sat. Now, when I got down there, I noticed there was a lot of young people like myself hanging around, so I was delighted. One of them was Irish. Okay. And she showed me the ropes, told me who was who and what's what and where to sit. And if you sit there long enough, you get to know all the prostitutes, and they will bring you a bag of chips or a sandwich or a drink of lemonade out of the pub, because they used to be frequented at that particular time, the gay club, the gay pub in Manchester, with all the LGBTQ plus people plus prostitutes, because the prostitutes went in there after they did their business to get a bit of peace from the outside world, so to speak, because we all welcomed everybody in there. We didn't care who
anyone was
for a living. There was no prejudice in the LGBT plus clubs or pubs in those days.
Yeah.
No. So everybody that was quirky was welcome. We understood women's situation. Yeah. So and that was true. Yeah. A lot of the older prostitutes. And there was one Irish prostitute that really took a shine to me and used to look after me all the time. And then I started getting little jobs behind the bar, washing the glasses and stuff as I was getting older. And you had to keep yourself clean to get jobs and stuff like that. And that's what I did. And in Piccadilly Gardens, there was a toilets where you could go downstairs in there. And there was wash basins and everything. So we used to all change and wash out our little bits and vats of clothes in there. And I'd bring him down to the union. They'd push him in behind the bar and have him, you know, drying in under there for me and all sorts of things. They didn't know I was homeless at the time. And that was how I
So you just
managed.
sleep on the streets then at that time? And then...
Well, you'd sleep in the toilets in Piccadilly or anywhere else. And I can't tell you the other places where we used to sleep.
No.
And we keep ourselves clean, because that way, you see, you could get a little job.
Yeah.
Washing dishes, and you kept yourself, you know, nice and tidy. Because if you were looking like an old scrag, you'd never get a job even washing dishes. I even got a job once in the Midland doing the dishes.
Did you? The Midland Hotel?
The Midland Hotel, yeah. They worked the bloody hands off you for nothing. I walked out. I couldn't be doing with it in the end. And not so long ago, I went into a conference in there and I was laughing my arse off. And I said to one of the waiters, she said, "Would you like a drink, madam?" I said, "You know," I said, "I used to wash the dishes in here." I said, "So you don't have to call me madam."
Ah.
She started laughing. She said, "Oh my God." I said, "I was only a nipper. The pay was lousy, and there was a boss in here from hell."
So there you were, a teenager, in Manchester,
trying to find my feet.
Trying to survive, homeless, but you've got this little job. You found as people say now, a community. To you, probably a family. LGBT and in the gay pub and all of that. So, how did your story progress from there?
Well, what happened from there was the police came down regular. I have to tell you this because this was the beginning for me. Yeah. The police came down regular, raiding the place, looking for people and dragging people out. And the police weren't very kind to the LGBT at the time, because we were seen as deviants and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And they would come down and wait for people outside, and fights would break out because they were being arrested for very little or nothing, or accused of something. You know, it was the prejudice was everywhere, even in the hospitals amongst the police and everywhere. It's not now, but it was then at the time. So they were queer bashers, basically, that was dressed in the Queen's uniform, coming down to beat the daylights out of all the lads. They didn't so much make for us, but they did the lads, and especially transgender lads, or lads that used to like to dress as women, but they were heterosexual. And they used to beat the living daylights out of them, and it was shocking. And every time I saw it, I went to pieces. This was the beginning of the change for me. I thought, you know, this is just awful, the way we're being harassed, the way people are being hurt, put away, etc., etc. And I jumped on a policeman's back. I tore all his hat off and all the rest of it, along with it. A crowd of us got stuck in and said, "Leave the kids alone, you know, they're not doing any harm." But they wouldn't listen, and you could end up then in the police station. And I did, of course, and I wasn't even thinking. And then at the police station, they took on board that I was underage and I shouldn't be this, and I shouldn't be, you know, and where your parents and all this. And I thought, oh, I'm in trouble now.
Because that was 21 then, wasn't it? It was like the age of anything, really. It was 21 then.
Yeah. So it was just absolutely dreadful. So anyways, I was allotted a probation officer. I still have her card today. And I won't tell your name, but anyway, she went off to Australia after she was finished with me. It's a good job. And so what she did was recommend that after she interviewed me, I'm not kidding you, after Miss Maguire, she was Irish. I was delighted when I had Miss Maguire was going to see me. I thought, oh, she might be sympathetic to me, you know what I mean? Because they didn't know what to do with me. Because I was underage in England on my own, blah, blah, and all the rest of them, blah, blah. And what have you. I hadn't really done anything wrong except try to save someone. So anyways, but that was the story of every LGBT, especially the lads. They got it worse. I ended up talking to this Miss Maguire, and she decided that I need to go and see a doctor, and that's probably the reason I'm so upset, and this is why I'm jumping around on people's backs outside a queer pub like this and blah blah blah. She said to me, "Are you a lesbian?" I said, "I don't know what I am." I said, "Well, I did. I think by this time I was starting to," and but I wouldn't ever admit it, but I was to them or anyone else.
Yeah,
I did. after that, I can tell you. You know, but you don't want to say it out loud, if you understand me, in them days. And so, to cut a long story short, she sent me to see a doctor. The doctor recommended that I have a lobotomy.
A lobotomy?
A lobotomy. Because this was why I was so wild and troubled and homeless. And,
so you used to have an operation on your brain?
Yes.
To try to stop you
it was a cure back then for people with that was lesbians or gay men. That was the cure, a lobotomy. I'll tell you, I went anyway. I had to go along with it. I didn't know what a lobotomy was. I said to this fella, I said, "Will this cure me and all that of being a lesbian?" And he said, "Yes." He said, "You won't be a lesbian after that." So I said, "Oh, right, okay." So I thought, I'll go along and I'll see what this is all about. I had no choice. You had to go along with it all. And I seriously didn't know what it was all about. So anyway, I was sat in front of this doctor. I was up in do you know where it was? It was in what they described as the lunatic asylum in Salford at the time.
In Salford. We used to call them mental hospitals.
That's right. Well, in Ireland, we called them the lunatic asylum. That's all I ever knew. Because I said to the woman, I said, "Am I going up? Are you sending me up to the lunatic asylum?" And she said, "Yes." But she said, "You won't be in the lunatic asylum." She said, "You'll be on another wing." And I said, "Well, I'm glad to hear that." And she said, "That's all right." This was just, a young person talking, naive. I wouldn't dream of describing it like that these days.
Of course not. But I think it's important to use the language that was used to see how far we've come, really.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So anyways, I walked into this place, and it was like a fortress. Every door was locked behind you going in, all these different corridors and stuff. Oh, it was awful. I can see it now in my mind's eye. Anyway, I went into this room. There was this doctor sat behind this massive, massive mahogany table. Massive it was. And I could hardly see him. He was that far away from me. And I pulled up a chair, and I sat there, and I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, what can I do for you?" I said, "I don't know. I was told to come here." I said, "Because you said somebody told me that you were going to make some suggestions that would make my life better, and where I wouldn't have to be, gay anymore or something. I don't know." I said, "I don't know anything about these things." I said, "But I said this was required by the police and recommended by a social worker." So he said, "Oh, yes," he said. And then he started talking to me. And I said to him, "Can you describe exactly what a lobotomy is? I've never even heard of it." I thought they'd give you a tablet and you'd be straight. And I thought, then that's the end of my trouble, and I can go home and be normal as everyone else. He said.
Yeah.
He started telling me all this business, and then started asking about, we'll take a little piece out of your brain, he says, and then your sex life will be changed forever, he said. And you'll no longer be a lesbian, he said, and you'll be able to go home and you'll be this and you'll be that. And I said, I don't understand. You'll be taking a bit out of my brain. What kind of a bit out of my brain? And I just had remembered that there was a woman in the union, a young Irish girl that I'd met, and she'd mentioned that word lobotomy, and it just struck me then. And she didn't know her backside from her elbow. She had it. And I says to him, "Will I be act normal and all that after?" "Oh, yes," he said, "you'll be a whole new person." He said, "You'll be delighted with life." So I said, "I'm here," I said, "so you can cut my brain out to make me normal." And he said, "Yes." So I slid back my chair. It was on wheels. And I put my little foot, I'm only 4'11". I put my foot up on the table, the 2 feet, on the table, the mahogany.
Yeah.
And I pushed it, and I pinned him to the back of the room. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I bolted for the door, and I ran down corridor after corridor after corridor till I finally found a way out into the open air. And I got out some side door that was open because the whole place was locked. And I ran and I ran and I ran till I went back to where I was living. And when I got there, they said, "The police has already been here looking for you." I said, "Well, can I come in?" And they said, because it was like, where we all used to live.
Yeah.
They all shacked up in one room or something. And so anyway, I was hiding in there for weeks and weeks and weeks, and the police was looking for me. Anyway, they opened the door and said they were looking for Miss Fitzgerald. Didn't I answer the door? I said, no. I said, there's nobody here. I said, called Lucia Fitzgerald. I said, that's a lovely name. I never heard of it before. And she said, well, her name is actually Mary Angela. And I said, oh, right, okay. And so they said, have you ever heard of her? I said, no. Does she live here? I said, no, love, she don't. And they looked at me, the two of them.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, there's something fishy here. And they just looked at me again. And this one spoke, and she came up closer and she looked at me. She said, brown eyes, dark hair, dark skin. And you're not Lucia Fitzgerald, you're 4'11". I said, how? She said, and Lucia Fitzgerald was supposed to be 4'11". Oh, we have the description of you, or someone like you. Well, I said, I don't know who it is that's like me. I said, but I'm not Lucia Fitzgerald. What about Mary Angela Fitzgerald? No. And she smiled. And she said, thank you very much. And off they went. I think the pair of them are gay to this day.
Really?
Yes, I think the pair of them are gay to this day.
So they never reported you? Or?
No, they said they couldn't find me. I wasn't there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And that was the end of it. That was the end of it. And I considered myself the luckiest person in the world because not everyone got off as lightly.
Yeah.
Anyway, to cut a long story short after that, I started getting myself on my feet, getting little jobs down the nightclubs, down the gay clubs and everything else. And I was getting older and more wiser. But what I didn't like was what was happening to all the lads losing jobs. If they were teachers or working in the hospitals or anything else. And all that kind of a thing was starting to play on my mind a bit, the way people were being treated.
Because it only became legal to be gay as a man. Was it 75 or something like that?
So, yeah, it was in the 70s.
Mid-70s, wasn't it?
Yeah. And I could be wrong about that, but I didn't pay much attention. I focused on the community where I was living. And what was happening in that. But of course, that was happening in the whole country. Yeah. The same thing was happening in every town and city in the country. But I was only focused on mine. So I was starting to get a bit depressed, Carol, about the whole thing, because I thought, how long can I live like this, looking at all this terrible stuff happening to people, and being put down and being chastised and everyone calling us barn pots. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. And there was more and more iffy people coming into the gay pubs and clubs, and more. You keep hearing of people being beaten or gone missing. A lot of young people were going missing during that time in Manchester. Believe me, they were. And we were all getting quite afraid. And I was starting to kind of take a bit of a turn. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And I did start to get quite depressed about myself. And I was sat one night in this gay club. And I was thinking to myself, what am I going to do? I really don't want to live like this, looking at everybody, going through what they're going through. And I overheard a conversation with a couple of people that was sat on a table nearby. And it was 3 or 4 women. And I got the impression they were from the university because they were talking in kind of very intellectual. I didn't even know what intellectual meant by then. I'd never even heard the bloody word. I didn't know what an MP was. I didn't know anything about anything. I was a greenhorn, as they used to call us in the days. Knew nothing. And so you could beat me till I'm black and blue, but you'd never get anything out of me because I didn't know anything. But I thought it was really interesting what these girls were talking about. They were talking about, we shouldn't all have to be living like this, there has to be some way we can get legislation going and all this. And I thought, what the hell is legislation going? What are they talking about? So anyway, I said, excuse me, girls. I said, is there any chance? I said, I could join the table. I said, I'm not after anyone at the table. Don't get me wrong. I said, what I'm interested in, I said, is what you're talking about. I said, because I feel like I've had enough myself. So to cut a long story short, one of the people that was sitting at the table was my best friend for life, Angela Cooper. And she was the one with all the education. And I was the one with all the street knowledge. If you put the two of us together,
powerful.
We were the biggest blackguards Manchester ever came across. We didn't care. But anyways, they were explaining to me after that and then they were explaining to me that they were just starting a thing called GLF, which was Gay Liberation Front, that had happened in America, and they were starting the same thing here. And the lads in the Union pub at that time in Manchester was talking about doing the same thing. So we all joined up together, and I was learning about this new thing to me called politics. And I kept having to say, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? Oh, could you do that? Could you do this? So I became more and more educated as well as politicized. And the more I gained in strength in politics and everything else, I thought, oh my God, yeah, we could change all of this if it was a case that there was enough of us. So what happened after that was the women's movement in Manchester, that was absolutely massive at the time. Fantastic.
So when you talk about the women's movement, was that about women who'd suffered domestic abuse, or was it this is a lesbian
women's
side
liberation? It was the women's movement. It was like a women's liberation movement,
like a feminist thing.
Yes, exactly. Right. Okay. Yeah. And they were talking at the table one night saying that's what we should do. We should join the women's movement, and see start going to some of the meetings and things, and see what happens. Yeah. So we went along to a couple of the meetings at the women's centre. They had a little women's centre. It was a right dive. You just took what you could get in those days. Yeah. And most of the women in the women's centre was all very middle class and very well educated. But by God, they knew their stuff. And they didn't half educate me, I'll tell you, around all sorts of things. Now I was grown intellectually as well. Yeah. I never see myself that way, but I was learning like there was no tomorrow about the ins and outs of the cat's behind, as they used to say at home, and I thought, yeah, this is not a bad thing. So they were talking when I said, hold on a second. I said, what is it that women are short of in this town? And they were saying, oh, they're short of this, they're short of that, and phone lines, women's thing. This is a little women. It was only a dive at the women's centre. So we said, who's on the phones? Is it, they only volunteer to go on the phones every now and again. So myself and Angela volunteered to go on the phones 24/7 and move in to a room upstairs, because when we were there, the phone never stopped ringing. And it was women with children in terrible distress, running from violent men and all sorts, and all sorts of terrible situations. Walking the streets at night, ending up going into the police cells and everything. The police had no place to put them, so they put the women and the children in the cells till the social services was opened the next morning. This is the way the thing was run. And women were beaten, was walking out into the rain, snow and everything with children in the middle of the night. No refuges for them, no nothing. The council never done anything or helped in any, because apparently some people did try the women's movement before that tried and everything else like that to get something going. Nothing would happen. And so we were answering the phone night and day to all these poor people. And in the end, they were turning up on the doorstep, Carol, with their children in the middle of the night crying. And they pouring in blood and everything. The police was bringing them eventually to the women's centre. And the place got packed with children. So what we did was, we were talking one night, a couple of us. And one of the women said, she said, there's a big 3-story house up next door to me. It's been empty for years and years and years. And she said, I was wondering, she said, if we could find out who owns that house. Are you with me? And see if they'd let us use it for this and that and the other. So anyways, no one could find out who owned it. So myself and a couple of the girls at the time were on. Now, there was 3 of us. There was 4 of us at the time. And we said, let's go up and have a look. So I had a big sledgehammer, and I brought the sledgehammer up with me. Angela had an old car her mother gave her. I brought the sledgehammer just in case. Up we went anyway, and it was a lovely big 3-story house. So they says, we were knocked next door, and there was a woman there. Said, no, there's no one living in there for years. So I said, okay. So basically speaking, I put the door in with the sledgehammer. And then what we did was, we got in touch then with the press, BBC, Grenada. Yeah. Back in the 60s, you might know all the crowd in the 60s. They were great.
Well, it's 70s now, isn't it?
Yeah, 70s. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. We were into the 70s now. Yeah. And we got all the papers out, and the Grenada and BBC came down, and all of them. I knew them all back then. I didn't know him before that, but I did after it. Anyway, we gave him a good look around and we said, and we done this because we need somebody to take notice that it's women walking the streets with children and we're not having it anymore now. How is that? And this is the way they were, you see. So they were all writing it all down and the interviews was flying. And then we had money through the door in envelopes, food piling up outside the door, and all the neighbours from around the place. It was absolutely fantastic. We said, we need a refuge for women. We've asked the council. So we asked the council again on camera if they do something about it. And they said, oh, we can, you know. So anyway, a woman came knocking on the door, etc., etc. And she said, yes, she says, can I come in? And she says, well, actually, she said, I'm going to provide you with this house. And she gave us the house.
Oh, she was the owner, was she?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I can't remember whether she was the owner because I'm forgetting silly little things like that. But anyway, she gave us the house.
Wow.
Or bought us the house, yeah. Anyway, we got stuck in. And, we opened the second refuge then, and that was it. So in the meantime, I had already started a women's printing press of our own because I met a couple of the lads that was married or living with, because in them days the communes was all going, you see.
Yeah.
And some of the lads was working in what they used to call an underground press in those days.
Yeah.
It would be a press where you could go and get your stuff printed without prejudice. Like black people had to be very careful where they took the stuff, and lesbians and gay men and, fringe groups couldn't go to an ordinary press and get their stuff done because they'd be overcharged a lot. Yeah. And then to be probably a mess when it came out. Anyways, I went and asked one of the lads if I could learn to print at their place because I really did need some sort of a job. And I'd heard that printing was a really good job. So they gave me a job there and they taught me how to print on these big printers, etc., etc. And I was there for a couple of years, still doing all my women's aid work and all the rest of it in the Women's Centre. And I was running between all three of them now, and etc., etc. And really gaining in momentum and gaining in the understanding of politics and how the chains and the bits and bobs work in society. So I was really coming on a great, and still very tormented though about the LGBT community in the 60s. And so what happened then was the lads were all retiring to go to other jobs because they were all mainly middle class, and et cetera, and they wanted to go and do something with their degrees and things that they had. So I said, could I have all the machinery? And they said, absolutely. So we went up in a lorry, got all the stuff down and what have you. And I turned it into the first women's printers, all women's printers in the country. Yeah.
Amazing.
And then we sent for the union. And we asked the union, if I could have a printer's card, because you see, then we could get grants. Once you had part of the union, you could,
and the unions were really strong in the 70s.
Oh, they were.
Before Thatcher came in 79, it was, yeah.
So along came the fella anyway, and he turned around and he was saying, he said, women aren't printers, so how can I give you how can I accept you into the women aren't printers? And I said, well, what do you think we're doing on the machines downstairs knitting? And he said, no. He says, I understand. He said, but you'd be classed as a machine minder, but not a printer. I said,
you're a woman.
So I said, so the lads, if the lads were still here, they'd be printers, and you'd give them their NGA card. And he said, yes. So I said, and I was classed now, I said, as a machine minder. I said, not a printer. He said, correct. I said, oh, right. So I says, I'll tell you what now, says I. Why don't you, I said, go away and have a little think about coming on telly with me, I said, and tell the whole world that. I said, and I said, we might get a bit of support, I said, around this. I said, so will you go back and have a word with your union? I said, and tell them that I said, that the next time we have a chat about this, it might be in front of a camera, if they wouldn't mind, because I said, I'm not going to, take this line down. So they said, okay, because I said, we need to apply for grants so that we can train other women to print so that they can go out and have any kind of a career that they want in what they call manual trades.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of engineering, you see, involved in it. And all
absolutely,
the rest. Yeah. Because it was big print machines. And so
bigger than you, Lucia.
Everything is bigger than me. 4'11". Everything is bigger than me. So, anyways, he came back, and he had to give us the card in the end because we were threatening to go and we have that debate on the national television. So he came back and gave us the cards.
So, can I ask you if obviously things are very different now.
Yes.
They're still far from perfect. But what would you say to, the youngsters now who grow up and it's acceptable to be gay, although, there's still many issues around that?
That what they say, Carol, is this. First of all, let me tell you, there's one born every minute.
Yeah.
There's a lesbian born every minute. There's a gay man born, and there's a transgender person. And there's those that just don't even want to announce themselves born every minute. There's also bigots born every minute. Are you with me?
Yeah.
And the thing is, are they made? Is the bigots made from people? Do you know what I mean? We don't know, but they're there and they're out there. So here's what I say to people. I spent most of this summer in lockdown talking to the very people you just mentioned, which is the very young LGBT community.
Yeah.
I had Zoom after Zoom after Zoom. And those children, as I call them, they're lovely. They're only young kids.
Yeah.
They're all out because their parents don't give a damn, okay?
Yeah.
And they want their children to be free
and happy.
To be who they are and happy. Yeah. That's all they want for their children. And I spent the whole summer on different Zooms talking to them about, because they all wanted to know the history and the herstory.
Did they?
Of how it all began.
Oh, I've never heard that word before.
The history and the herstory. Oh, yes, that's very important.
Yeah.
Because they're both important. We only ever hear of history, but we never hear of her story.
Very good. Yeah.
Do you like that one, Carol?
I really like that one, yeah. I really like that one.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I kid you not, yeah, those young people made me cry my eyes out more times than you could possibly imagine. The strength of them, the love from them, the gift of just being who they are. And the young people do like to hear their history and their herstory. They all need to know how it changed, you see, because they've heard about all these different things. So to them, I'd be like, I suppose, like a little suffragette to them. A person that was there at the time, you with me? And I can tell them what happened and how we changed it. And then that inspires them. Because my last word to all the kids over the summer was, don't ever let anything hold you back, and never put your head down, taking your last breath and have bloody regrets. Do it now. And they're on. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, what a joy to be able to speak to you. It's genuinely an absolute joy. Now, someone else who's stepped up to take direct action is hero truck driver Tom Burkett. He's the star of today's Your Stories of Pride, paying tribute to people who go that extra mile. So, here's JK to tell us more.
Tom Burkett hates being described as a hero, but it's a title he's going to have to accept. The 35-year-old who comes from Kendal in Cumbria was driving his truck along a busy motorway when he noticed something odd. Looking up at the bridge, he saw 3 people, one dangling over the edge. He realised someone was trying to take their own life and risking serious injury or worse if they fell. As he said, I thought I'm going to have to do something here. This lad's going to jump off. In a bid to help, he parked his 44-ton wagon under the bridge near Warrington and put his hazard lights on to warn other drivers. He manoeuvred his cab so that it was underneath the man, meaning that if he actually fell, it would only be 10 rather than 25 feet. Tom, who is married with children, waited there until the police were able to reach the scene and provide the man with the support he needed. He was suffering with mental health problems and is now receiving treatment. The man's mum has since spoken out to thank Tom, who says he did only what anyone else would have done. Typically modest, as he puts it, I basically figured out something I could do. I did my good deed for the day. The police are the ones that saved him. I'm not the hero of this story. I'm happy with being called a Good Samaritan. Good Samaritan it is then. Thanks, Tom.
That's wonderful, Tom. Thank you. What a brilliant thing to do. Thank you so much. If you know a Tom, or if you have something you'd like to share about yourself or someone in your life, please do get in touch for the chance for us to feature them in our regular Your Stories of Pride slot. For now, all that's left is for me to say a big thank you to all of our guests today, to our friends at TSB, to the lovely Jsky, and of course, and most importantly, to you for listening. Thank you. Don't forget to let us know what you think about this and all our other episodes of our podcast on our Pride of Britain social media channels. We love to hear feedback. Well, I will be here next time, hearing some more life-changing stories, the Pride of Britain. I'll see you then.